Anyone who goes on YouTube will quickly find that there's no shortage of videos that discuss how to use various anabolic steroid drugs. I've avoided doing these kind of videos for a number of reasons. First of all, I'm not a medical doctor and I don't claim to be. And I think only a medical doctor really should be giving out that kind of advice, although ironically, most medical doctors have absolutely little or nothing about anabolic steroids, so they are not even good sources about anabolic steroids. Unfortunately, the information offered in many of these internet-based videos or YouTube videos regarding anabolic steroids are utter nonsense. They're based on what they call anecdotal information. In other words, it worked for me type of situation. Some of the dosages that are recommended are downright dangerous. They're not mentioned. There's no science behind it whatsoever. It's just basically made up on the spot. And that's basically it. I hesitate. I don't like to talk about this kind of stuff because you never know who's watching, who you're dealing with. It could be some young kid. You tell him to take certain drugs and the kid could wind up screwing himself up for life or even dying, and that's not my thing. However, I'm going to make an exception in this video. I'm going to talk about a particular anabolic steroid, and the reason I'm going to talk about this particular steroid is because I'm going to reveal something that I think most users of this drug have no idea exists. It's a feature that they recently found about this particular anabolic steroid that isn't generally well known even by the so-called internet steroid experts. So you could say this video serves as kind of a warning to people. The steroid that I want to talk about here is Trenbolone. Trenbolone. Trendbolon is a anabolic steroid. It's basically derived from nandrolone or durabolin, which is another anabolic steroid, or what they call a 19-nortestosterone steroid. The difference, though, Trenbolone is much more powerful than nandrolone or durabolin. Much more powerful. In fact, some people say it's 5 times more anabolic than testosterone. Other texts say that it interacts with the androgen cell receptor at 3 times greater affinity than testosterone. What all this means is that it's much more powerful than testosterone itself on a weight for weight basis. So anyway, there's basically 3 types of Trendbolone. One of them is called probably the most popular. I should say really that Trendbolone is probably the most popular and legendary of all the anabolic steroids because of its potency and some of its attributes, which I'll talk about in a second. It's extremely popular, but there's one thing I want to say on the onset about Trendbolone, and this is important to know, that it's never been approved for human use except in one form, in the form of a Trendbolone. There was a Trendbolone injection that was available years ago. It was removed from the market, I think, around 1987. That was the only human-approved form of Trendbolone. All the other forms of Trendbolone, Finaject, Finaplex, of these various names, they are all veterinarian steroids. And the company that made the human version discontinued it, like I say, almost 30 years ago. Today, Trendbolone is available. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but it's available mainly in veterinary form in pellets that are used to increase the weight of cattle. They kind of use a gun and they kind of shoot it into the cattle, and it makes the cattle gain weight. This is Finaplex, and this is what's generally available today. Of course, there's a couple of quite a few underground labs that sell what they call Trendbolone. But again, this is like a kind of homebrew type of situation. You're not really guaranteed of any purity. In addition to that, I've seen internet sites that call themselves legal, and yet they list Trendbolone as one of the things they sell. Just the mere fact that they're selling Trendbolone on the site makes them an illegal site, since Trendbolone has never been approved, like I say, for human use in years. It's a Schedule III drug, and any site that's selling Trendbolone is by very definition illegal. So, how do they get away with it? I suspect that the Trendbolone they're selling probably isn't even Trendbolone. It's probably another steroid, such as testosterone, that they're kind of trying to pass as Trendbolone, or it could have nothing in it at all. It's hard to say. I really don't know. You'd have to have it analyzed to be sure. Uh, Although I will point out, and I think I've mentioned this in recent videos, years ago they did a study where they gave a couple of powerlifters a injection. They told the powerlifters that the injection was decadurablin, anabolic steroid. All the powerlifters that they gave the injection to increased their lifts and got much stronger. It wasn't until the end of the study that it turned out that the so-called decadurablin injection was saline. In other words, it was salt water. Yet all the lifters got stronger. This illustrates the power of the placebo effect. So there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of the black market steroids that are purchased probably have little or no activity, yet some people will make gains on it because they think it's the real steroid. And it can have a placebo effect where they do subtle things like train harder and push the weights, and they actually do make gains on an inert substance. So don't rule that out. Anyway, like I said, there's Trenbolone acetate. That was Finejet, which was a injection, which was discontinued in 1987. The same year that Finejet was discontinued, they came out with this cattle pellet stuff called Finaplex, and that's still available today. It's pellets that, like I say, that are injected in. The one drug, I should say the trade name, which I was referring to earlier, the one form of Trenbolone that was actually temporarily allowed for human usage, the only form ever allowed for human usage, was called Powerball. Powerball is probably a legendary steroid, one of the most famous and potent steroids ever produced. It was a long-acting form of Trenbolone, whereas Trenbolone acetate's kind of short-acting, with the usual suggestion that you have to take it every 2 to 3 days, that type of situation. I'm not going to get into any dosages here because this isn't a one of those cheesy anabolic how-to steroid videos. I'm not going to get into that for the reasons I discussed earlier. I'm just trying to give general information. I'm trying to make a point about Trendbolon, which I'll get to. This is just introductory stuff for people that aren't familiar with Trendbolon. Okay, what they do now with these pellets is they'll grind maybe anywhere from 2 to 6 pellets. They'll grind it down. They'll add some oil, maybe sterile water, and they'll inject it. And they sell kits to do this online. The problem here is that it's hardly sterile. You could be also injecting various pathological organisms when you handle this kind of stuff. I have a medical report that was recently in a medical journal about a bodybuilder who used this kind of homebrew Trenbolone. He injected in his butt, and he got a severe tissue necrosis. Basically, it was a widespread destruction of the tissue. It had huge amounts of tissue had to be removed. He got an infection. It was a bacteria called Staphylococcus aureus. That was so I don't know how it got in his Trenbolone mix, but it did. This is just one of the hazards of messing around with some of these black market drugs. Now, Trenbolone has the reputation of increasing muscle hardness and definition, and one of the reasons it does is it has almost no estrogenic or water-retaining effects. You don't have to use anti-estrogens such as Arimidex or Nolvadex with Trenbolone. But strangely enough, when it's taken alone, here's where the controversy. Some people say even when used alone, Trenbolone is a very potent anabolic drug. Others say that when used alone, it's not that great. You have to stack it with other drugs. For example, the guy who people call the steroid guru, Dan Duchaine, he said the ultimate steroid stack consisted of Trenbolone, testosterone, and a anabolic steroid called Anadrol. He says those three would produce massive muscle size. He called it the ultimate bodybuilding stack. He said it was very synergistic. This was Dan Duchaine's opinion. It was based on zero science. It was all anecdotal. Okay, an interesting thing about Trendbolone is that this is also written up, is that it's been suggested as a possible SARM. I've discussed SARMs in recent. Oh, there goes my dog again. I've discussed SARMs in recent videos. SARM stands for selective androgen receptor modulator. These are drugs developed to kind of produce some of the anabolic actions of testosterone with the minimal androgenic effects. In other words, it doesn't stimulate the prostate, and it doesn't cause some of the negative effects associated with testosterone therapy, but it does provide anabolic effects. Why would Trendbolone be suggested as a possible SOM? Two reasons. First of all, like I say, it doesn't convert into estrogen, so there's no chances of estrogen-type side effects such as gynecomastia or male breast formation, no water retention. Another reason is that Trenbolone does not convert into dihydrotestosterone, which is a byproduct or a metabolite of testosterone metabolism that causes side effects or is related to side effects such as male pattern baldness, acne, and prostate enlargement. Trenbolone does not readily convert into DHT either, yet it is, of course, a very powerful anabolic drug. But the problem with Trenbolone is that it also does produce some of the same side effects as testosterone. If you look up the side effects of testosterone, you'll see some of the common side effects of Trenbolone are increased aggression, night sweats, a drop in cardiovascular endurance, impotence, and there's one strange effect that I wouldn't say a lot, but a certain percentage of Trenbolone users who inject Trenbolone, they notice what they call trend cough. Shortly after injecting the Trenbolone, they get into like a coughing spasm. The cause of this so-called trend cough isn't really known, but they think it could be caused by some sort of irritation effect by the injection itself. But it's usually short-lived. It's not considered serious. But I just thought I'd mention that. Another controversy related to Trenbolone is that some texts claim that let me backtrack. One of the problems with Nandrolone or Decadurabolin, the durabolin type drugs, is that they're progestins. In other words, they can interact with what they call the progesterone receptor. This could lead to, in some men, it can cause estrogen-like side effects, including gynecomastia. Now, the controversy about Trenbolone is that some people say it is a type of progestin drug, because again, it's very close in structure to Nandrolone. Therefore, it can interact with those same progesterone receptors and produce estrogen-like side effects. But others say, and some studies show, that it has a very lower affinity for progesterone receptors. So this is a controversy. I don't really know what the true answer to that is. What I do know is that a kind of an interesting effect of Trenbolone, and this probably explains its popularity also, besides its powerful anabolic effects, is that it's even more potent than testosterone itself at blocking corticosteroid receptors. Corticosteroid receptors, when stimulated, favor muscle catabolism or breakdown, and by interfering with the activity of corticosteroid receptors, you have that lowering of catabolic effects in muscle, and combine that with the anabolic effects inherent in Trenbolone, you have a very, very potent steroid, which probably explains its popularity. But here's the point that I wanted to make in this video. This is important, and I'm going to tell you right off the bat that so far there's only been animal studies that looked at this, but the mechanisms involved exist in human beings too. So without going to a lot of detail, here's what I'm going to tell you about Trenbolone. Here's what these animal studies show, and this is exclusive to Trenbolone. Trenbolone seems to increase a protein in the brain called beta amyloid 42. Now, what does that mean? Beta amyloid 42 is the same protein that accumulates in Alzheimer's disease. In other words, it's thought to be the underlying cause of Alzheimer's disease, along with another protein called tau, T-A-U. But an accumulation of beta amyloid 42 is very, very bad for the brain. These animal studies showed that when Trenbolone was provided to animals in doses comparable to what athletes and bodybuilders have been known to use, it caused a rapid accumulation of beta amyloid 42 in the brain, and it also selectively destroyed hippocampal neurons. The hippocampus is a portion of the brain that's considered one of the main sites of memory and intelligence, and it's particularly negatively affected in Alzheimer's disease. When you have Alzheimer's disease, the neurons in the hippocampus are selectively destroyed, which accounts for many of the behavioral symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as loss of memory and thinking ability and that type of thing. Well, it turns out Trendbolone actually selectively destroys the hippocampal neurons. Trenbolone can easily enter the brain. It can get past the blood-brain barrier. And interestingly enough, testosterone has a reverse effect. Testosterone itself actually helps to protect the same brain structures, probably because testosterone aromatizes in the brain. It can be aromatized into estrogen. It's estrogen that actually provides the protective effects in the brain. But the interesting thing is when you take Trenbolone, it actually blocks the protective effects of testosterone in the brain. The theory behind that is that Trenbolone lowers the estrogen content in the brain, therefore it increases the toxic effects, of the drug itself. In other words, it magnifies the toxic effects of the drug. This is basically. I also want to say that the one of the most common side effects of oral anabolic steroids is what they call cholestatic hepatitis. Basically, the movement of bile. Your liver gets inflamed when you take certain anabolic steroids, and this bile is constantly being secreted in the liver, where it's transported to the gallbladder, where it's stored. When your liver swells up like that, the transport of the bile is blocked. It builds up and it causes a eventually destruction of liver cells. This is called cholestatic hepatitis. And as I say, it's usually associated with what they call 17-alkylated anabolic steroids, oral steroids. However, Trendbolone can actually cause this same type of cholestatic hepatitis. Trendbolone in any form, regardless of what you might read on the internet and some of these black market sites, Trendbolone is very toxic to the liver and kidneys. Very toxic to the liver and kidneys. So it can, like I say, it also causes that localized liver, tissue death in the bodybuilder who bought some black market steroids. Kind of causes tissue to break down at the injection site. So that's what I want to basically say about Trendbolone. If you want to continue to take, I know a lot of people here. This video is going to fall on deaf ears. You have all these dozens and God knows how many videos extolling the virtues of Trendbolone, talking about what a great drug it is, and people are growing on it, and they're getting big, and they're getting cut. I don't know, maybe because I'm a little older, I'm a little bit more concerned about keeping my brain. And the thought that a drug like Trendbolone is slowly rotting my brain, that would be enough to keep me from using this particular steroid. And right now, Trendbolone is the only anabolic steroid that has been shown to cause this brain destructive effect. It hasn't been shown with testosterone or any other injectable steroids, only Trendbolone. So, if you want to continue to use it, then, that's up to you. Anyway, in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, I don't give out steroid regimes for the reasons I said earlier, because they're not based on any kind of science. They're anecdotal, and I don't like to. I try to stick with evidence-based science. So, but I do talk about medical applications of steroids, medical studies related to steroids. I also talk about nutrition, supplementation, ergogenic aids, anti-aging, fat loss techniques, ergogenic aids. All these articles are in depth. They contain no advertising. There's nothing like it anywhere on the internet, and certainly not in any magazines. Certainly not in any videos. All of it's evidence-based. It's called Applied Metabolics. It's at www.appliedmetabolics.com. Some of the upcoming articles I have, for example, I'm going to be talking about another controversial subject, roid rage. Who actually does get roid rage? Is it real, and who really gets it? There is a certain type of personality that might surprise you that's more prone to getting roid rage than others. I'm also going to talk about some new and very interesting research about whey, and also I'm going to talk about the best times to use various supplements, and on and on and on, all kind of off the road topics that you won't find in other sources. So again, www.appliedmetabolics.com. Thank you for listening, and again, if you want to take Trendbolone, I mean, it's a black market steroid. You don't really know what's in it. There's no guarantee of purity. Be my guest. I mean, you have been warned. And take care. You're better off just going to a shelter and adopting a dog. The dog will be your best friend, and he's not going to rot your brain like Trendbolone. Anyway, take care.